Hello, everybody, and welcome. Good to see everybody there in the chat, all the members of the channel. Thank you for being here. Big thank you to my moderators who are here today helping out, going to help us keep the wheels on the bus. Nancy's here and Mama Opal's here. And I think, it's going to be a really fun time because I'm doing one of my favorite things, which is interviewing people in and around the community of this whole exposing Scientology. I'm Natalie. This is life. This is Scientology Life After a Cult, where you'll catch me in the morning sharing recaps of Scientology news, sharing my own 35 years in Scientology and leaving with 3 generations of my family, and doing what we're doing right now that we're going to do today. We're going to be talking to Windy City Thetan Watch. He is a live streamer and protester of Scientology out in Chicago. We've highlighted many of his videos. I've been wondering more about, what motivates him, what it's like being out there, what are the weird things that he's seen in learning more about Scientology. He's most well known for, we've highlighted a lot of videos where he gets out there in Chicago and when Scientology recruiters are out there, he just shuts them down by letting people know what the deal is about Scientology when they're approached, and even seeing if they would like to give back the propaganda material that they may have been handed by a Scientology recruiter. And I love it when he does that. So everybody, make sure that you head over and you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button as well, and set that notification bell so you can get notifications when I go live. But without further ado, I'm going to bring up Windy City Thetan Watch here. Welcome. Hip, hip, hooray. Oh, let me unmute you. Hip, hip, hooray.
Howdy, Natalie. Great to be here. Great to be here.
I am so excited to chat with you and share with the audience. I love giving people a little bit of a behind the scenes look because they see people out there protesting and doing their thing. But I know I'm sitting there wondering, who is this person?
Excellent. I love that. And by the way, I love the service that you provide because, and we're starting to see it much more with 200 channels, the idea that we can't have our eyeballs on all of what's going on across the Scientology or anti-Scientology spectrum. And it really is a great service that you're doing. And you and the other larger channels help us small channels grow and get awareness.
I love that. I love doing it because I can't think of, I feel like I'm doing something that I've always wanted to do, which is to expose Scientology and to share the stories of other people. And there's so many stories here within this community, and to be able to share what other people are out there doing across the country, I think is just, I love it. I love it so much. I want to show people your channel here. I'm going to pull it up. Make sure you head over to Windy City Thetan Watch right here. You can see his channel and subscribe because you can catch his great content. Not only is he out there protesting, he also does collaboration and videos with other creators as well. I've caught a couple that you've done with Declared Dave Loves Suppressive Sherry. Always a mouthful. I really love those.
I call him Depressed Dave more often than not.
Depressed Dave. So tell me this, Paul. Tell me, how did you get started protesting Scientology? How did this come about?
Yeah, I'm going to back up just a little bit more and talk more about just my personal history. I grew up in a suburb of Chicago, so I was always within a stone's throw of Chicago. I grew up going to a Methodist church, but I was in the Methodist church the way that 90% of people are. My parents took me to a Sunday school church on Sundays. I went home and dreaded every moment until I had to go back there again the following week. So it was ritual is the best I would say out of that press. And it felt almost like punishment. And I don't mean to say that religion or that is punishment. I wanted to go play football and baseball with the kids in my neighborhood. I didn't want to be in church on a Sunday morning. And then as I grew older, I had friends who were involved in closer to fundamentalist religion organizations, but still mainstream. So they would have been middle of the road, the Baptist church, the full gospel church in that space. And I was so interested in what they had to do, and I believed in the message. I went to school, and my first degree was in pastoral studies. I went to church for about, so I worked for the church for about a month, and I didn't realize how much money flows through a church. And that is not to say that money flowing through a church is a bad thing, but it was
Yeah.
it was very astounding to me that, oh my gosh, what's going on here? And I thought we did it for the good of it type thing. Now,
Yeah.
the money in those churches flows through the church versus what I would say the Scientology message has always been money comes in and it evaporates. It goes straight upstairs.
Mhm.
They don't reuse that money to help the community in any way, shape, or form. I know that they'll claim false victories on we shared our parking lot with a food donor, and that means that
Yep.
we did something.
Yep.
So that's really kind of my history with religion. I always saw Scientology as an odd fantasy. What in the world can they possibly? It's unbelievable what they believe in this space. But at that point, it was all right, fine. Silly people for silly people to believe in, or silly things for silly people to believe in. Who cares? So it never really got on my radar again. About what is it? 18 months, 2 years ago, Aaron somehow falls into my feed, and to start hearing the second generations and the stories of the abuses, crimes, activities that went against those members was absolutely eye-opening to me. And again, I don't care about the odd technology or belief system of Scientology, but
Mhm.
what their actions were just atrocious. And I thought, I think I want to try to figure out how to speak out against this.
Wow. So how did that start then? What was your first step into that world of exposing Scientology?
Yeah. My first reaction was, well, I can't be a panelist. I don't know anything about this church, and what credibility do I have in this? And then we saw the Los Angeles protesters, right? The William Good, Palmadessa,
Mhm.
and things expand out of that. It's like, well, that's something I think I could do. And then fortunately, trashy V12 BMW was the first guy in Chicago, and Shannon was out there as well. And I said, well, this seems like something I can do, and it doesn't cost me much, right? I mean, I'm in this area, I can go do that. So that's really what I decided I was going to do. Now, I will tell you that I was terrible at it. I wasn't live in the beginning. I would tape delay it, and I stumbled, right? And I still do stumble a little bit. But at first, it was like timid. What right do I have to play in this space? Maybe as a
Mm.
statement.
Mhm.
And the very first day I actually went out live. So I did the first time I ever visited the Lakeview. Now remember, I got into this a month before the Ideal Org finally opened up. So they were up in Lakeview, which is a neighborhood north of the city center. And I have a drone, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to go take some drone photos. And I did that. And Barbie, she has a real name, and it also begins with B. But she came out and confronted me and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Taking pictures with the drone, right? What do you care?"
Yeah.
And she goes, "Okay, well, I was just interested." And I was like, "Well, yeah, that's fine, but I'm legally able to do this, so that's really all I was doing that day." Now, I did get some interesting photos when I had done that, so that which some were of private elements. So I could, I can't publish those, but I was able to see into the org differently than what I would say a typical person would be able to see. Then, maybe a week and a half later, Shannon was down there, and I asked if I could come out there and join her. And strangely, I think it was the day that we all met Korn as well.
Mm.
And Trashy ended up coming down later that day, and so we protested there for a bit, and then we all went down to the org. It hadn't been opened yet, but I wanted to show them a lay of the land and what I had seen there before in Printers Row.
And that is the new location of Scientology. Their ideal organization is there. That opened and things have really grown. You have multiple protesters out there, more than, I
Yeah,
probably couldn't name everybody off the top of my head. And we were fortunate enough. My Tony and I went out there and protested with you guys and met a lot of people there. And we're just so amazed with everything that you guys were doing. I've always felt, and I've talked about this, that Chicago Scientology, that there's just something more more to what's happening there than a typical organization somewhere like, say, in Hawaii. It's almost like their Scientology is putting an added importance on it. And you can often tell by the way that they'll push back on protesters. And there has been a lot of pushback with you guys there. When you first started going out and protesting after you had done the drone and all that, and you've kind of gotten to know people there, where did you get the idea to, what made you decide to get to that point where you're like, just directly letting people know, hey, just so you know, Scientology is a cult. Here's what they do, what they just handed you. Here's that, where that's going to lead to. Would you like to give it to me?
Yeah. I'm going to say I backed into that because, again, my first example would have been Shannon. And Shannon, similar to, let's say, a Pearl Snappy, they're a force. They're vocal. They're going to yell a little bit. And I tried that, and it just really wasn't comfortable. I didn't feel comfortable, and I didn't think that if I'm trying to get somebody to engage me, I didn't think yelling at them would be the appropriate way to do that. Then when I was down there, the protester, the body routers, and Aaron gave it a different name. He said sidewalk recruiters, which I like that. But either way, and I'm sorry about talking with my hands. Sorry.
Quite all right.
Those sidewalk people, they came out about a week after the org open was the first time I saw them. And I was kind of interested, and I just wanted to go down there and see what's going on. Because prior to that, all I could really do is say, what are you doing in this cult? Why do you want to be here in this cult? And you're never going to get a response out of a Scientologist on that question. Yeah. And I just watched this guy. And the first one I saw was the one that I see most often. And he would go up to people and he would hand this out. And I would say similar to what I hear about if I walk into a testing center, they're not really supposed to talk to me. They're supposed to really shepherd me right over to the video machine, right?
Exactly.
And they're gonna say, hey, the video will tell you everything you need to know about this. I'm not going to do it. And I felt the same way about this particular router. He was comfortable handing something out, but he wasn't going to say much else. He would maybe give you the address or point towards the org, but you weren't getting a read on what you had just received. And also it's a deceptive element, right? That they give you this, whether it's the personality test or Dianetics, you really have to look hard to figure out that it's Scientology, right? There's nothing on it that indicates it's Scientology. And all I would do is after he would hand it off, I would just approach whoever the people were that he was talking to and say, hey, it's a cult. And some already knew. And I thought, oh, that's great. And I thought, this is going to be real easy. Everybody in Chicago already knows that it's a cult. We're not going to have any problems, which, by the way, that's a big mistake. And I'll go back to your earlier statement on Chicago. Something different is happening in Chicago. They're aggressive here. And hopefully, we'll come back to that. Somebody's going to have to remind me to come back to that. But they would hand these off. And more often than not, when I would just explain a few things, and I would usually go through the short, it's a cult. They won't tell you they're Scientology, and that's usually enough for them to do it. You would see the Scientologist shake their head in sadness and walk away. But eventually, if they wouldn't give up the flyer right away or throw it out right away, I would then say, hey, this is the group that wouldn't let Danny Masterson's victims come forward to the police. And when they did, they were ostracized and they couldn't talk to their family anymore. And just showing some of those, I always call them the crimes of Scientology, but whatever it is, they're things that don't look positive in that. And that was really what started me doing that. And I thought, this is easy. I'm not going to, on my watch, I don't ever want to see a body router succeed at handing off a piece of paraphernalia.
Love that. Right. I love that. And it's very effective, not just in that moment of when you see that, that individual person. Now they know the information when they see that body router again, because a lot of people in that area live and work in the area, and that's why they're there. So they're going to be presented with something from Scientology again. They have that information. And what a story. If I'm sitting outside and I'm sitting there and a Scientology, body router recruiter, sidewalk recruiter comes by and hands me something. And then this guy approaches me and lets me know what's up. And then I give it back to him. And we have that exchange, that is a story I'm going to tell people because I'm like, guess what happened to me today? And then this guy came in, thank goodness, because he found out. There's so much appreciation that we see being given to people who are educating about Scientology outside at these different protests. And that's such a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
The support.
Two of the things that I use the word proud, and I understand that sometimes pride's not the right term, but I feel good about my activity. One day, Jessica, and Jessica is a very attractive female. And by the way, if you're going to be a body router, it's not a bad idea to put your best looking people out there doing it.
They do.
And
they
she
do
took
try
somebody,
to. That is
yeah,
totally a thing in Scientology.
Yep.
They do.
and it's noticeable in our area. She took somebody, she walked somebody by the elbow down the street away from me to get her out of the, let's say, the blast radius of the protesters. And I just stood behind and I kept on telling this guy, hey, that it's a cult. They're going to take your money. They're going to give you a personality test. They're going to tell you have some flaw. There'll be some nickel and dime book they'll give you. And then when you come back, they're going to just keep doing that. And she walked him far enough away. And I said, well, I can't keep on spending my time on this one. I'm going to go back to the org. He posted back on my chat about 2 weeks later, I'm the guy in this video, and because of you, I did the research. And I'm going to say that if I never do anything else in Scientology again, that's enough, right? The idea that I stopped somebody and that person did the research because of what I said in that space. He also said he was very scared.
Yeah, because
yes,
they were in the middle of recruiting him when that interaction happened. That is amazing. That's absolutely amazing. I bet that was very motivating as well.
It was. So the day of, I was frustrated, right? The idea that, oh, I didn't get through. But when I get the comment back in the chat that says, I'm the guy at 27 minutes into this video and you helped me that day. And I had a similar situation. One of the things that I struggle with, don't get old. My memory is a little bit foggy. It was either last week or the week before, but there was a guy in Dunkin' Donuts and he was sitting with the body router. And I saw them when I came up and he waved to me. The guy waved to me. He thought I was a street block, like a Dan Walks LA. He thought I was Dan Walks LA for Chicago. Well, when he finally comes out, he comes up and talks to me and I said, well, first I say, hey, do you know who that guy was that you were just talking to? He goes, I think I do, but I think you know better. Who is he? And I explained to him what it was. Well, this guy had just been engaged by Scientology the day before with a personality test. He went inside, he bought a Dianetics book, and he's the one that, I can't remember if it was on your channel or on the other channel, cash or credit, right? That was the first question is, do you want this book? It was, are you going to pay cash or credit for that? And they had talked about courses with him. And he and I talked for about 25 minutes. And he's on the spectrum. He takes medication to balance chemicals in his brain. And I thought, I think I just saved another life right now, right?
Guarantee it.
Those are the things that, like, there's days that I know that I'm out there for 8 hours, and I know that the audience must be bored as snap on it, but it's these little things where, you know what, I think I made a difference today, and that's a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. That is so, to just be boots on the ground like that and see that. It also then has this added effect because you're there with that person one-on-one, but you have everybody who's watching your live stream, some who might be new to the channel and learning. And then it gets, we highlight it and more people see it, who some people, this is the first time they're hearing of Scientology is through a creator on SPTV, and they find out about it that way and learn more about it. But then they get that information and they become familiar with seeing Scientology recruitment tactics so that they can notice it themselves, understand, and know that if that happens to them, because this sidewalk recruitment is Scientology's biggest tool in getting new members. So by live streaming and protesting the way so many are doing, it's cutting that off. And they are getting incredibly desperate. And we can tell because they're doing things like what happened with Nance Drew, with, the staff member Chadwick, and them trying to press charges over his arm or whatever it was, making contact with her body. Just absolutely ridiculous. but it's showing you how this is how desperate they are to try to make this stop.
Yeah. So I'm going to make either a sexist or arrogant statement, and everybody, I'm saying it in the nicest way. I wouldn't let them bully me when they first met me. So they don't really try that tactic very much. Chadwick was the first one that tried to deceive me. There were college recruiters there one night, or college-age students. I didn't know they were recruiters yet. And Chadwick tried to walk me away from the door. And he said, "You want an interview with a Scientologist?" I said, "Sure." He said, "Well, come here." And he just kept on going and going and going. And I was like, "All right, you're lying to me. You're not going to do that." So I went back to the org. But one of the things that I think that they do very well, they probe to see what is the human that I'm interacting with willing to push back on in those spaces. And I can tell that they will try to intimidate some of the other protesters. And this, I'm not trying to inflate myself or anything, but that they'll impose themselves over a female, right, in that space to show, right, I'm a threatening figure. You better be scared and run, type thing. So those are the things that, I'm glad they don't. Well, I'm not saying that I'm glad they don't do it with me. They just realized very early on that'll not be an effective process in this.
Yeah, it's
but
not.
I do
They
feel
probably
a
it's not a
sense of
button. They're sizing you up
Right.
to find out what your buttons are. And that is the thing. They think that they can intimidate females. We've seen that at other protests. We saw that happen with Laura FM on L1 Hubbard Way outside the Blue Buildings, where a man came out. She asked him a question. He ended up getting right in her face, screaming and hitting her head with the bill of his hat. And that's how she first met DOA, who came running across the street and got the guy to back off. Laura would have, gotten him to back off. But there is that addedness of it, because Scientology in many ways is stuck in the 50s and still thinks that those are the kind of things they can get away with. So it is not out of that realm that they wouldn't target female protesters differently, trying to push those buttons of it being more physically threatening, in that way. So you're right. That is something they will try to do, and try to find out what your buttons are and then push them.
The one thing that I've tried to, I'll say, add recently, I've missed two really good opportunities because I wasn't ready with my camera equipment. Usually I set up my camera equipment at the train station and come in. A month and a half ago, I got off the train and the body router was right there. He was on the platform handing out flyers. So I was able to chase him away, but I have no evidence of it. And I don't really care that nobody knows, but I know that I chased him away.
Yeah.
About a week ago, this guy kept on trying to come out. They always try to come in the front and back door, and usually I'm mobile enough that I can get to where they're going before they get there. And I could tell he tried to come out 3 or 4 times. He couldn't get out. He couldn't get past me. Eventually he was able to go out the back way and go down into the subway. Well, I was done for the day and I was ready to go home, and I went down to the train station and he was in there. And I was able to chase him out right then. And it was the first time that I saw him express, I'm going to say out ethic because I don't know well enough what it is, but he gave me the finger and he said, it was, why are you doing this to me, type thing. And again, it's a good feeling because I don't feel good about injuring another human, but I love the idea that you realize that I'm going to keep on stopping you from doing this.
Wow.
We saw last weekend, we saw one of the females raise their fist at me to say, "Don't follow me." The one that had the human rights CCHR.
She was quite a distance away too.
Yep. And she was raising her fist. And I said, "No, if the police saw that, I'm pretty confident that is a threatening action, right? That's not just putting your camera in my face." And
and it doesn't matter whether you're female or not. Yeah.
Right.
It's still threatening.
Right. 100%. Yep. This happens similarly. There's another, a black female that I've seen a couple of times, and I've stopped her. I've taken flyers off of her victims as well. Well, one day she was leaving the org and she said, "Don't follow me." I was like, "You're in public. I'm going to follow you as much as you want to." And I've held with the mantra, I will give you your First Amendment right to pass out your propaganda. But at the same time, I'm going to exercise my First Amendment right to educate and inform the people you're talking to. And my style of protest is, I'm not saying anybody has to in this space, but I want to give the protester space. I don't really care to engage. I want to give the Scientologist space. I don't want to put any pressure on them or anything of that. But I do want to make sure that I can quickly engage whoever they're passing off information to. I'm starting to change that a little bit with I think this might have been a Noraism. Let them know that you're the one that's crushing their stats. And I do kind of want to keep on putting that little mental tidbit in their head that I'm the reason your stats suck this week, right? And I'm going to keep on making your stats fall. And I think
the why is windy.
Nice. I think that's an impactful, and again, I'm not a Scientologist, never have been. I think stats matter, right? Like you go through the week and you care about that thing if you're a Scientologist.
Hugely. It is such a big thing, and many people might not understand this about being a Scientology staff member. There is nothing more important above helping people, above any of those reasons they might give as their purpose or reason for being there, as their statistic. So number of promo pieces handed out, that is a statistic. Number of people body routed into the organization, that is a statistic. And they are suffering. And that is really hitting them where it hurts, because it makes that impact and it drives down morale as well. And the great thing about these protesters and live streaming all over the world is it gives even Scientologists the opportunity to see that it is not just your organization that is empty. Every single one of them, there just aren't that many people there. And you're seeing a lot of the same people. In your time in Chicago, since you've been there and since you've been protesting Scientology, is there anything that has stood out to you or surprised you as you've come to learn more about Scientology and this group?
Yeah, I'm going to say Chicago specific, and I was educated by Aaron for the most part. And by the way, I'm not following Aaron. Aaron doesn't tell me what to do, but I watched him for a long enough period of time.
You're not an Aaron-tology?
Yes. I love that the claim was that, right, he's this God that everybody looks up to and all of that. It's funny. It's tragic or funny. But a lot of what I know is from Aaron, or by proxy, you, Nora, Liz, Liz Ferris, Serge, that hearing all of these things, and they're kind of what helped give me ammunition to talk against these people. What I understood from Aaron was that Chicago was kind of a backwaters of Scientology. Nobody cared about it. It was a non-existent org for the most part. There were a couple of missions, and the one up, if you look up at the building that was in Lakeview, it's built in 1950 and looks every bit of a 1950s building. When they came downtown, the number of people that I see in uniforms is rather surprising, and I get a little bit flustered because I wish I had more platform to make people aware that Chicago's not a backwater anymore. There's a concerted effort to grow Chicago.
Oh yeah, no, I've been saying that since they opened the Ideal Org, and I've even said it with look, I can't even necessarily show you this. I'm just telling you based off what I'm seeing and my experience in Scientology, there's something brewing more in Chicago than the other organizations. They would put a lot of importance on Los Angeles or in Clearwater, or depending on, where Tom Cruise is going. It was New York. They did Spain because he was dating Penelope Cruz at the time. I think you're right about that. There seems to be this intensity with Chicago. We saw it from day one when the Scientology organization, when they opened the Ideal Org and they shut off the streets, violated their permits, assaulted people, kept students out of their dorms, the levels they went to. They also put Scientologists out on the street to block people from going down. That's different too. That's not something they've done. So I until I'm shown otherwise or see something different, I agree with that. I think there's something more to Chicago that Scientology doesn't want us to know. And guess what? OSA, wake up. We gonna find out.
Give me 1 second. We just had the clouds come over. I'm going to go turn on the light real quick.
No problem. Wow, it really did get dark in there. We've had bad weather here in Minnesota. It must be the same in Chicago.
Yeah, it's we have sunny and 90, and then all of a sudden it's going to be 60 and storms in a heartbeat.
Ah,
If you were up at, like, if we would have asked any of the protesters to take a head count up at Lakeview, I think the number would have been 12 to 15. That I'm really confident that there was a surge and the surge might have calmed down, but I still think that right now in the past month, I'm seeing 50 unique faces. And that's a 4X element in regards to what's going on there.
you mean
And
in terms
there's
of people
money,
who are there to protest?
no, uniformed. So
Oh,
people that are
uniform
associated with the
Scientology
org,
staff.
the population of
Okay.
Scientology staff Scientology is huge compared to what it was up in Lakeview.
Ah.
And a lot of it, we saw Cecala's name several times. So last weekend was the wedding, and I loved that I was able to catch him in the alleyway sneaking in the back door. But I also love that he would have been
Perfect.
a big fundraiser of the org, and he brings everybody in to show that his son is getting married, and the idea that I have the front door closed and I have the front shades closed. And I'm like, is this what you're proud of? Do you like how you spent your money here, Mr. Cecala? Right.
Yeah. I love
And
that.
his
I love
family
that
is
you
well
love-
indoctrinated there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's like multi-generational in that family, and so many of the staff members work for their company for Dream Exchange.
Yeah, absolutely. Which that still throws me a little bit, and I'm going to have to talk to one of you second gens better, because I always understood that Sea Org got birthing, but I didn't really think that staff members did. And then the idea that these are staff members who probably are making good salaries. This is the business is in the financial sector. They're probably making good salaries. Why are they in the studio apartments across the street?
Well, they aren't making good salaries. They don't get salaries in Scientology. Are you talking about the staff members?
Yeah. So the staff members that are employees of Dream Exchange. So my
Oh,
expectation
gotcha.
is Dream Exchange probably funds their quality of life pretty nicely, which allows them to be a staff member on the pennies a week Scientology salary, right?
Yeah, because they do that, and that's what ends up happening for staff members in an organization like Chicago. Staff members that are not Sea Org members, because in the Sea Org you are provided room and board. Now, if you are posted in a Class 5 org, as it's called in Scientology, which Chicago is, as a Sea Org member, doesn't necessarily mean, it depends on the situation. When I was sent to a Class 5 org, when I refused to end my pregnancy, my husband at the time and I were sent there. We were responsible for we were still Sea Org members. So we both worked full time for Scientology. And then my husband at the time had another job on top of the full-time job at Scientology to support the kids and myself, because I was making hardly no money as a Sea Org member on staff there. So that job they have at Dream Exchange, for example, yes, would fund them being able to work for Scientology. And probably and Chicago is an expensive place to live. So when we had that situation in Chicago where it came out from the neighbors saying, hey, these Scientologists have people 8, 9 in a studio, not everybody's working for Dream Exchange, and you just don't know. Are those the Sea Organization members that are working there? Is there a mix with the staff? Like, what's the situation? If they're sending Sea Org members out there to man the organization and turn it around and make it truly ideal, it's not out of the realm of possibility that the org is not being forced to pay for an apartment for the Sea Org members there. That could be it too. But still, you're cramming a bunch of people into a small space, but they don't make enough to be able to at the organization itself to support themselves.
And it's that we originally saw that everybody came out of the imprint. Now we're seeing that there's another place that's 2 blocks over, and then there's another place that's got to be on State Street or further away. And the DSA, and again, we presume it's the DSA because I don't think anybody else would ever come out and try to have a conversation with me or talk to me in public. She was the one that called the police when I was chalking there that morning. She walked in from State Street, right? And DSA being OSA, I know OSA can be public and it oftentimes is public, but if they were staff, would they be somebody who was being birthed?
So the director of special affairs in an organization like Chicago is a post. It's a job that exists within the organization. They are part of the Chicago organization, but separate. It's almost like a floating division on its own. They're part of it, but they take all of their direction and orders from the Office of Special Affairs, Western United States, or I don't know if Chicago falls into the Scientology, Western United States or Eastern United States in terms of management, but it would be one of those, and they would be getting their direction from the Office of Special Affairs. Now, I have seen in organizations where that director of special affairs most times when I've seen it, they're a regular staff member, not a Sea Organization member, but I've also seen it a couple times where they were a Sea Org member as well. But the last few I've seen, I know locally at Scientology where I live have been 2.5 or 5 year staff members. So they wouldn't be being provided room and board, more than likely. Often too in Scientology, you'll have a couple, and one of them, like was the case for me way back in the day, where one person in that relationship would be holding the job outside of Scientology to support that couple or that family.
Yeah, and that's always what I had anticipated. Now, Declare Dave is kind of my instructor or cramming officer. He has said that there's policy that says if you're a staff member, you have to be able to make a living at it. And I can't imagine that anybody really ever made a living at being a staff member.
Yeah, no, not unless you sold a lot of books, because staff members and even public can get a commission if they're selling books. And I knew people that were really good at that. Sometimes the course room supervisors who supervise the courses were good at kind of getting people to buy books. It just really depended. But I've not seen in an organization, it does in multiple places. L. Ron Hubbard in his administrative policy will say, yes, they should be making a good living. They should be successful. That's just never been the case. The way it's set up in Scientology, even if you're an organization bringing in a ton of money, so much of that goes up the line to management, up to international management, up to David Miscavige. They also are having to compete with the different Scientology front groups that also fundraise. You've got the Ideal Org Project itself, which is to get Scientologists to totally extend beyond what they can do to fund these big empty buildings. You've got the International Association of Scientologists, which is straight up donations. And they claim that they then fund things like, oh, look, we put up this Super Bowl commercial, or, we are fighting psychiatry, all of these things. There are so many. So there are so many different demands being put on Scientologists financially, including the staff members. They get hit up as well. If Sea Org members or registrars from another organization know that you have money of any kind, you got an inheritance, word will spread. They share that information. After one of them has gotten what they want from you, they will trade tips with each other and go, hey, Paul over here just inherited about 30 grand from his aunt. Let's team up on him. I'll get 15 for my project. You get 15 for yours. And they will tag team that person to get the money, even if they're a staff member, even if they're a Sea Org member. I have heard of situations and seen so many where Sea Organization members inherit some money from a family member and then it gets taken. They get pressured to use it for Scientology, as if their 24/7 time not having a family, not spending time with their family is not enough. It's insane. Let's grab some questions. There's a couple questions for you here that I want to go over. Let's see. First, I want to say, your old lady, thank you so much for becoming a member. Hip, hip, hooray. Do you have memberships on your channel?
I do, but I kind of tell everybody that you get you get the emojis out of it, and I won't ever hide or delay messages or delay
Sure, 'cause
videos.
it doesn't show always which channel this is on, so I'm just gonna welcome these few, like, "Carol, hip, hip, hooray." I think you guys might be on mine, but you might be on Paul's. Either way, it is so appreciated. One of the questions from Scientology Triggers is, have you encountered any Nation of Islam members?
Yeah, we definitely have, and there's. I apologize that I keep on referencing Aaron, but Aaron put up the video of the Chicago Friday night graduation. And there was somebody that spoke before that. Well, two of the women in the background are two of the women that I see all of the time in that space.
Ah,
And they definitely are. They've identified as Nation of Islam outside of either on a Facebook post or in other social media spaces. So that's their identifiable element. There's most likely others like Kwali Kwaza. He runs the Club 21, and he's one of the people that was there the day of the opening, and he's one of the people that brought the police superintendent in Chicago. Police superintendent is the top cop. He's the one that brought the police superintendent in for darn it, the term "making nice with neighbors," safe
ah,
pointing. So right,
safe pointing,
he
yeah.
was the one safe pointing the police. So yeah, we definitely have now. There are people who say, hey, you have to be a little bit more worried about them. They will historically they've had a better violent bent than the Church of Scientology.
Mhm.
We just haven't seen that yet. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but we haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, that's interesting. How's about, Annette's asking, what do you think about the police there and their opinions on the sidewalk chalk?
Absolute frauds. That it was
Mhm.
that you could even tell the first police that show up, they're like, why the heck am I on this police call? Right.
Yeah, especially in
And even,
Chicago, there's so much going
right.
on, but let's show up for chalk.
Yeah. If you read any of the Chicago newspapers, there are almost 20 pew pew incidents every single weekend. Right. So the idea that you need to worry about chalk out here is hilarious to me. And then the idea that they would say it was marking, and you then go further, and some of my channel subscribers, they called the police and said, what if my child is chalking? And they said, well, that's different. It's like, no, the content doesn't matter. It's either legal or not legal to mark the sidewalk, is kind of my opinion. And to think they're not acting on behalf of the Scientology organization is ridiculous, because there's no way in the world, the day that the woman said to me, how's your wife and kids? I told the officer, if I asked you how your wife and kids are you letting me go home tonight? Right.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's so dumb. It's like bullying is so 1986. I mean, it's so dumb. I just love the way that in so many ways the social contract around, trying to intimidate these whole black ops and things that used to work with Scientology just don't work today, and they're going to be on the internet that day, if not the next day. You're not the only ones with camera Scientology pointing everywhere. Now we have people live streaming with cameras out there. Now, Marilee Hurd is saying, I'm not in Ariantology. My cult is Nora Natalie, and we're opening a Canadian org. I'm all for it, Marilee. Let's open Canada.
agreed.
I can't.
And I would say that if you the people that I most identify with, Jay, Mexican long hair, Jeff in PTS for
Canada.
life.
Yeah.
I love the way they interact, right?
Mm,
And that's really who I feel more comfortable trying to emulate in this space.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it is we're all individuals. Everybody has an individual story, reason, purpose for being there, what motivates them, and have their own vibe. And that's how each person is going to protest. And they're doing their own thing. Each person protesting and live streaming out there are doing so as individuals. There's not, sometimes I get emails like, can you let the protesters know that? I'm like, no. Unless, we talk about it on a live stream, but it's not my, my role here to dictate. I have my ideas or 2 cents and things that we share. But I also know as a Scientologist, different things have impacted me and different Scientologists were impacted differently. So many reasons we get in that are different. It's going to take many voices that are different to get people out.
Right.
But
And
I did what
while
you're
I've said, yeah, like that idea that I emulate the one, I saw Laura's comment there, and Pearl Snappy and Shannon in Chicago. The people that are loud and boisterous, they're making a difference too. They just make a difference differently than I do, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's impossible not to say that Pearl Snap, that if you think that Scientology hates me, I assure you Scientology hates Pearl
oh
Snappy
yeah.
more.
Oh, absolutely. And the beauty of like a voice like Laura FM's is it's recognizable to people who are inside there. And the passion in which, in fact, Laura was protesting the other day outside Big Blue and calling for her dad. And Hollywood Aja just broke down in tears. It communicates, it gets through, it's so impactful. And the beauty of people who were born and raised in Scientology now, being side by side with people never in Scientology, but all in on ending the cult is creating a different type of movement. And the fact that it's not a coordinated effort beyond maybe some people are like, hey, I'm going out at this time. Do you want to go out at that time? They're doing their own thing. They decide. And on my channel, between doing interviews with different people within the community, but on the recaps, we're talking about the things that we see and what happens, not controlling it. There's a level of like, what are some things that people find helpful? Can we share that? And people will always just gravitate to like attracts like. And there's moments where, depending on where I'm at that day, where my headspace is, I will find myself, just kind of more attracted to this particular protester, and I'll be consuming that content. And then another day, it's different. It's necessary to have that difference because none of us are the same, and it's the same in Scientology. And I like
One
too
thing
that Corin says she brings levity, but I'm pretty sure I don't have a skill set. You totally have a skill set.
she does. I love having her out there, and I really do love having all of the protesters out there. The idea that people have our back is really the best thing that comes out of that. One thing I did want to kind of mention, you had asked about this earlier. I think I'm making a difference in the neighborhood as well. The day that I was assaulted, many of us went to a restaurant afterwards. After we got out of the restaurant, I was just walking home, and a couple from the neighborhood stopped me, and they were very awkward. Like, hey, I'm really sorry. I know this sounds odd, but we have a question. I said, sure. What? We see you out in front of Scientology all the time. What's going on there? And they let me talk to them for 20, 25 minutes to be able to say, here's what they're doing. Here's how they're affecting your neighborhood. Here's how they try to pull in money. Here's all of the crimes. And usually, if I want to make an impact, I just have to say, go look up Danny Masterson, go look up Lisa McPherson, right? Because that's an anchoring point for them to go later. And the idea that people know something's happening in this neighborhood. And again, I'm not saying I made a difference, but it's being noticed in this neighborhood.
Yeah. That is impactful because people talk. Neighbors are going to talk. Like I was saying, you have that conversation with one person. It's such a break from their average. How many times do you get approached by a cult a day? For some people, that's going to be more few and far between. They're going to talk about it, especially if a guy came up afterwards like, hey, here's the deal with those people. It's impactful.
Yep.
Let me grab
I had a similar.
there's another.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
But do you want to go ahead and then I'll just ask that next question?
I had a similar one with one of the business owners. One day he pulled me aside and he said, I see you out here every day. Why are you out here? And again, he's being glad handed by the staff members. So they're making, they're safe pointing their neighbors. And by the way, they should. And you should try to be friends with your neighbors. I'm not saying that. But then I went through the scenario of all the short list of crimes that they're aware of. And I said, I can't tolerate that. I don't want that in my neighborhood. And I don't want them to be able to draw more people in. So,
yeah, that makes so much sense. And I just love that people communicate that and share that. Hell's asking, are the ones with gold and black vest staff? Yeah, they're staff members.
I'm going to push that to you because I'm going to say that I'd be guessing.
Yeah, they're staff members. Public don't wear those uniforms. Some of them might
Right.
be Sea Org members. So it's a mix of Sea Org members and staff members. But when you see the vest, know you are looking at somebody who is employed by Scientology, or as they like to say, they're religious volunteers. And because they're volunteers, we hold them to a contract. And if they try to leave, we're going to hit them with a big freeloader debt and make them pay for all the training they did to do their job. Yeah, that's illegal, but we're a church and we get away with that. Neuropsych, do they have a lot of front groups that might target the students? So in Chicago, do you know anything about the front groups out there?
Well, I do, and I'm going to say that I don't know if they've got addresses headquartered there. Like you'll be able to see that at the PAC base, and you'll see that in Clearwater. But I will tell you that I have captured the drug booklet. I've captured the CCR booklet. So they act on behalf of, but I'm not positive. And again, we saw them out on the street, right? They were dressed up as CCHR. So yes, they are acting as the front group doing that work. And those are the ones that scare me more because that's even a more innocuous name. And the idea that it has anything to do with human rights is ridiculous,
Yes.
right? They're anti-meds and they're
And
anti-psychiatry.
that is the whole idea. That is the whole idea, is they want to position themselves as the savior of the problems that they are actually creating. This whole Citizens Commission on Human Rights, their whole war against psychiatry, it's insane. And when you start to realize, when you leave Scientology and you start realizing that these are the organizations that I thought and I believed were doing good because that is what I was told. It is just mind-blowing to me. Scientologists don't know that. They wouldn't be there if they did. Like, it's not something. Now, there are very few who are legit. I would qualify as more being like having more, like they're more evil people. But a lot of them, I would say, got into Scientology because they wanted to help, and that help has been hijacked, and they're fed so much propaganda, and they have to believe it, because not believing it would be so shocking to the system and their world and what that would mean. It's hard, I think, to accept that. Do you know if they have any Memorial Day plans? Marina's asking. In Chicago,
I do
I've
not.
heard they
That's
do some.
that's a good point. I don't know if they have that there, but I will say that I'll probably be out there on Monday. And I will say that just before this, there was texts from some of the local community arranging times and places. I'm down there. So we will be down there this weekend. I just don't have any idea as to when.
Yeah, that'll be cool. That'll be cool. I know in LA, anybody in LA, I do believe they're doing something. I thought I saw it on Eventbrite. Somebody could probably look it up and see and find out what that is. Melanie's saying Wendy should keep his own stats on how much propaganda he's taken back and present that info to them on Thursday morning.
53 right now.
That's right. It'd be great.
Do you Goodwill Hunting?
Yes.
The movie Goodwill Hunting. Okay. At one point, he gets the number from the girl, and there was the hoity-toity college kid in there, and he just puts the number up against the window and says, "How do you like those apples?" And if they wouldn't give me the trespassing because I touched their window, I really want to come back to the York every single time and say, "Got another one." Right? You're wasting your money trying to shuffle these out here.
Well, and the thing is, the person handing them out, that's a statistic, number of pieces handing out. And I'm wondering, are they taking off the ones? Because sometimes they see you take it back. And how many can they be getting out? Have you ever tried to walk down the street and hand people pieces of paper? They're not having it.
Yep.
A lot of them, as it is. Let's see here. Wendy should keep its own stats. I love that. Marilee Hurd, thank you so much for becoming a member. Hip, hip, hooray. Hip, hip, hooray. Let's see. That question we answered earlier already. Blue Nonona is saying, they told me the birthday game was just for fun. Yep, that's right. And Ren says stats are everything to Scientos. That is totally, totally true. Let's see.
That is another thing that, again, I told you I was working on the crush your stats, but the idea that letting them know that everybody's stats are down, right? So
Yes.
helping, because
Yeah.
I think that is something that it tickles in their ear, and they're going to go talk to Lisa and Leslie and Fred and Charlie and say, "How are your stats doing this week?" Right?
Mm.
Or I assume there's a network of friends, like you all. Do they know somebody from Kansas City because they were in Clearwater at the same time, or they moved, or did there's got to be that little network of, hey, I know a couple of people over this org. Let me go check out and ask them what's going on over there.
So they would never at least voice like, oh, I wonder if everybody sucks as much as we do. And they do, because when you're on training, for example, you do make friends when you're on training from different Scientology organizations. Could they talk and be like, hey, how's this? Or, how are your statistics? But Scientologists are indoctrinated to not push bad news like that. It's called in theta or interbulated theta. Even if it's true, you are not to share bad news like that. So they would never be like, yeah, it's dead here. That is called an enemy line in Scientology. And you're not allowed to say those things. That's part of how they keep things so compartmentalized and are able to convince Scientologists that the problem is them. They convince the staff members the problem is you guys. You're not expanding. Look at Austin, for example, where they achieved this ideal org status, right? They were short on the staff members that they needed. They're a hot mess and a half with the crew that they have there. And we're not seeing any actual expansion in their numbers. It's actually going the opposite way, thanks to the protesters being there. It's all just fascinating when you dig into it of what's really happening. Declare Dave loves Suppressed Sherry left you a super chat and says, body riders have nothing on Windy. He knows shy land like nobody else, and he's faster than the wind. Oh, that's
That is,
funny.
I on occasion, if I'm chasing the body riders, they'll try to run, and I'm a very, I've got some quality times in the marathon. I grew up, I
Yes,
was
you can
nearly a sub
pace.
4 miler. So the idea that, I keep on telling, hey, OSA, can you tell these guys they're not going to outrun me?
Yeah, you're not going to outrun me. Let's see. We answered that question. This is an interesting one. Fat Grammy says, do you feel the level of superiority feeling increased because so many are affiliated with Dream Exchange? So I think what she's saying is within Scientology, there is this condescending kind of superiority viewpoint for many, not all of them, for many, where you look down, the Sea Org looks down on the person below them, that organization, and it just continues on that way. And often it's that way for staff members. I don't know enough about Dream Exchange to know, like, do they think that they're so much better than, I don't know if that person means other Scientologists or areas. Do you have anything, any input on that?
I wouldn't, other than to say, because the son is the executive director, the son of the
Yeah.
owner of Dream Exchange is the executive director. Well, that's a status symbol. So who doesn't want to please their boss in that regard or listen to their boss in
Yeah.
that regard? And just the number of people that work there, there's got to be a cachet, a circle of clouded members, staff
Yeah.
members in the org because they know that. And I don't know how this really works, but do they show well on the wedding day? Some of the girls just had really beautiful dresses on, and are they showing off clout? Which my guess is you're not supposed to do that in Scientology to kind of one up somebody in that kind of way. But who doesn't want to dress up on a nice wedding day, right?
Yeah. Oh, I think they one up each other. It's definitely more of a there's a lot of, uh I don't know what you call it, like just inflation of the chest, just a lot of flexing that goes on in that world, but it's usually in terms of, oh, I just got back from the free winds and I have to tell you, I had the most amazing whatever. Or, oh, when you go to flag, I mean, honestly, it's the same outside of Scientology at times, but in Scientology, it's just its own brand where you get like, oh, if you go to flag, you need to be audited by George. I'm telling you, he's the best. He's the best. He audited my XYZ, whatever. You need to be audited by this person, or you need to meet my field staff member who got me to sign. They're the best. Just like, meet my doctor. It's that same type of a thing there. I wanted to share, Carla just became a member on your channel, so I can see when it's on your channel. I see that now.
Nice.
Wanted
Excellent.
to just
I appreciate it. Thank you, Carla.
Yes. SP from afar. Have you seen Monique Chickock? Is that how you say that? If so, what exactly is her position? Remember, her dad told me she was the executive director. During the opening of, I remember seeing this on stream. The dad was saying that his daughter was the executive director. So that must be the name. I'm not familiar with the names of the executive directors for Chicago.
Yeah. So
do you know
that name? I've seen that name before, but I also know that the SP from afar is on my channel, and she may have asked me that before. The executive director day is Joe Cecala, the third, right? So
okay.
And Joe Cecala's wife is also a member, but her name is Crystal Erlock. I think it's fairly common in Scientology that you don't adopt names, right?
You mean, well, say that again?
In Scientology, it's not uncommon to keep your maiden name in a marriage space. So I don't know if she goes by Ehrlich or if she goes by Cecala now.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, it just depends, I guess, on what the name is. I don't recall any specific, I don't know, might be a change of the times too. If I think there's more and more, my daughter didn't take her husband's name. And with the kids, they were like, well, they almost flipped a coin, what name would be taken there. But that is actually a really interesting thing. And I've not, I've been out of Scientology for 14 years. If that's kind of something that's become more unique to Scientology or not, I don't know, but that is interesting to consider. I would like to know.
Yeah. And I'm definitely going to write that name down and see if I can find it in any of my, like I said, there's a huge network of Facebook people. And by the way, they have been private. They've been becoming private more frequently.
They become private? Oh, you mean on Facebook?
Yeah.
You mean, or like on their social media, making it private?
So, yeah, in social media, originally they would have been public. So it was very easy for me to connect a lot of dots and to see names and faces of people that I've seen in the org. But slowly they keep on, privatizing is not the right term, but making private their friends lists.
Oh, interesting. That is, they will do that. They will tell people and Scientologists that, to do that because, so-and-so was on your friend list. And here's the other thing. Some Scientologists make their friends list private, so they don't need to deal with stuff from the Office of Special Affairs. There are many Scientologists that don't like it when OSA, gets up in their business and is like, hey, you're friends with so-and-so who knows Natalie. Like I've been contacted by people never in Scientology who have a connection to a Scientologist, and they were reached out to and told, hey, I see you're friends with Natalie Webster on Facebook, knock that off. And they're like, I'm not even in Scientology. I was never in Scientology. But because my ex-husband is in Scientology, I need to do that? No, that's not happening. So I think part of them will do that as well. I think they're doing it for both reasons, which just cracks me up. Because I did a lot of hiding from, my own church when I was there.
It is one of those things that, again, darn it, messed, right? The idea that, hey, we're not supposed to be able to affect them. They're supposed to be able to push their actions out to us. And I love the idea that we're changing their behaviors, right? That's got to be so anti-Scientology in every way, shape, and form.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is. That's what's so interesting about the whole thing is, what are they, and because I've known people and know people who are under the radar Scientologists. In other words, they're like watching everything on SPTV. They know what the deal is, but because of things going on at the moment, they're just not ready for them to make that jump to publicly leave. And have told me like, yeah, I just finally made my friend list private because they got sick of hearing, which tells you how many people are leaving because they got sick of hearing, hey, you need to disconnect from so and so. They send these messages amongst themselves and let them know, hey, so and so is no longer in good standing with Scientology. That's actually what they say. Not even so much that they left, because then you're spreading that people left Scientology. They say they're no longer in good standing and you're going to want to unfriend them. Oh, and SP from afar gave you a super chat and says, keep up the great work. Hope to see you soon. Do you have
Thank you so
anything
much.
you want to add or chat about before we wrap up? And then we're going to do a raid of another channel here.
Yep. I really appreciate what we've done here so far. I want to encourage anybody to come out, and you don't need a camera. If you just watch what I'm doing, and I didn't mean to have to say that I'm instructive in this process, but it is a pattern to show how easy it is to thwart them from being able to do their work. And if they can't get new recruits, they'll die on the vine. I've told people before, I'm probably not going to pull a lot of people out of Scientology, but I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure that they get no raw meat, which is a term I wish we could figure out. Can we say it? Can we use a nicer term of that?
New people.
The other one,
That's
yes.
Scientology's term for new people. And people, Windy City Thetan Watch, here is his channel where you can go find him there and do subscribe. But I agree with you. It's so cringe and it's still used to this day. That's what Scientology refers to people who are new, who they're getting in there like that. Ew, ew, ew. It's so gross.
And the only other thing I want to say is that I think that I want to put a how-to, and it's not really a how-to. How do I help stop body routing? And see if that's a pattern or a video that's going to be helpful to others. Because again, I don't think you need a camera. I think you need to know a few talking points, and you just need to walk behind these routers as they're trying to pass off their propaganda.
I'd agree 100%. Not having a camera would probably freak them out more. Because they're going to be like, oh my gosh, is this a thing now? But there's nothing to stop somebody from having a conversation with somebody who just got approached by a Scientology cult recruiter. Selfless Self just gave you a super chat and says, really like the cut of your jib. I don't know what that means. All of Austin.
So you've got a sail, the front sail on a sailboat is a jib. And if it's shaped correctly, it captures the most wind.
Oh, Selfless. He's so poetic. All of Austin Org's social media presence disappeared for some mysterious reason, aka Pearl Snappy scares them. 100% they got rid of that because of that video that was done where Pearl Snappy and Selfless, I think you were on that video too. I think there might have been 3 people. They went through certain social media and exposed some scandals in the local Austin organization. And it just, they freaked out. They freaked out and they put everything on lockdown. But it was out there and they shared it and it was absolutely hilarious. So that happens too. That's why they'll get rid of it. Well, I cannot thank you enough for being here. I just love what you're doing. I think doing that video, what you just said in how to stop body routing, I think I personally would, I'd love it. I think that would be very helpful for people. And the idea that people who, if you're not live streaming, you don't even need to live stream. You can just go out and stop body routing, go out and do those things. It's not a requirement that it's filmed. It's often a good idea, even if you're not live streaming, to record just from the viewpoint of self-protection and try not to do it alone. Are there any other tips that you might share with people who are considering protesting?
The one I would say is if you can find a buddy, it's always best. And I've said this before, that the more angles, that if you ever see interaction, by the way, my personal opinion, avoid close interaction with anybody on the street. But if you see somebody who is involved in a personal interaction, please sacrifice your stream and make sure that you've got a camera on that person from a wide angle. That's the defensive mechanism that we lose. You know, unfortunately, I was in Tokyo when Chicago opened, and I was very concerned because some of our most vocal protesters were hidden from wide-angle views, and I know that they were being physically accosted below the camera sites in those spaces. And it's, you know, I understand that we're all out here for clicks and likes, and it is an element of what's going on here, but sacrifice your stream to protect your neighbor in these spaces. Yeah. But that's, you know, my opinion is the more angles we can have on this, you can't have Scientology telling their shore story to the police when the police show up.
So true. And they are going to try. Susan said signs are great to have. People do read them. That is absolutely true as well.
Yeah, it
Well,
makes
thank
people
you.
stop. And every time somebody stops, it gives you an opportunity to engage them. And you'll see it. Somebody will walk by and all of a sudden they're like this. And it's like, ah, they just asked me to ask them a question.
Yep. Yep. That is very true. That's so true. I just love it. There's so much to see in Chicago. Whoops. Hold on here. We got a little technical thing going on. There's so much happening there. I'm excited that you're there. I'm excited that you're going to be doing more content, that you're collaborating with people. So people can find that too on your channel. It's not just going to be live streaming and protesting, but you're going to be, do you want to just kind of touch on that a little bit before we head out?
Yeah. So while protesting is one of the things it's very easy for me to do. I'm very close to the org all the time. I still like doing the panels and the education. And there are people who I want to give them a platform just as much as everybody gave me a platform, you know, the Natalies and everybody of the world. But it's just more education, and my audience might be different than your audience, and it's really trying to make that pie bigger. So typically it's we're doing audits or protests, we're doing panels, and we're doing video, you know, in studio videos of educational elements on this.
Yeah.
So
That's fantastic. I'm so excited. Well, I know that we will chat again. Everybody keep an eye for what he's got going on in Chicago and beyond. In the meantime, before you guys leave here, please be sure to like this video, subscribe to both our channels, and if you would indulge us in a little raid, Liz Ferris is currently live right now. We checked SPTV space. Nancy just shared a link in the live chat here. You can go over. Let's go raid Liz. She is so awesome at coming over and supporting this channel all the time. Go over there, show Liz some love. Let's see what she's talking about. And again, Nancy just put a link in the chat there so we can do a little live raid. Paul, thank you so much for being here. I know we'll talk again.
my pleasure. Yep.
Everybody else, you know the drill. I hope you get out there and have an amazing cult-free day. Go over and give Liz Ferris some love.